Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Incidentally Reliable podcast. As now we become a part of Xurrent, we are really proud to introduce a new host for the Incidentally Reliable podcast, Jim Hirschauer, who heads product marketing here at Xurrent as the new host of the Incidentally Reliable podcast.
So it's funny, there's this old saying, it goes something like this: the more things change, the more things stay the same. And with that in mind, I'd love to talk through with you a little bit about your journey with starting Zenduty. I don't know the story yet.
When we looked at the sort of universe of problems that needed to be solved, incident management was something that came to us naturally. While there were some solutions that helped you manage incidents reasonably well, none of the solutions in the market took it to the next level.
Yeah, the traditional needle in the haystack issue. Observability tools are wonderful, but they flood you with too much information, right? So filtering is very difficult.
Without strong observability, I don't think you can set your team up for incident management effectively, right?
Reliability is about fixing things so they don't happen again, not just getting them resolved quickly and hoping they don't happen again.
So I would say you can't use tooling to fix culture. I think that is top down.
If you could boil it down to 3 suggested recommendations, ensuring the best possible reliability within your organization for your own applications, what would those 3 pieces of advice be?
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Incidentally Reliable podcast. I'm Vishwa, the host of the podcast. When we started this podcast back in 2022, our goal was to deep dive into the world of site reliability engineering and explore the human side of incident management. It has been absolutely an incredible journey for all of us here at Zenduty and Xurrent, hosting these conversations with veteran engineering managers. And as now we become a part of Xurrent, we are really proud to introduce a new host for the Incidentally Reliable podcast who can dedicate more focus and bring you the best of insights within the industry. I'm thrilled to introduce my colleague, Jim Hirschauer, who heads product marketing here at Xurrent as the new host of the Incidentally Reliable podcast. Hey, Jim, how's it going?
Hey, Vishwa. It's going great. How are you?
I'm all good. I just wanted to introduce you to our audience. Jim has about 20 years of experience managing complex production systems, primarily in the banking industry. He lives and breathes culture of reliability that we talk about every single week. I'll still be around as a guest and as a fan, but I'm excited to see where you take the show and you take this podcast. And with that, Jim, the mic is yours.
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. In your preamble here, you mentioned the human side of site reliability engineering, and that's been a passion of mine for a long time, focusing on the human beings and all of the emotional changes that occur in a human as we do this job. We're under a lot of pressure. People who are in the reliability world are under a tremendous amount of pressure to keep systems performing properly and to keep them up and running. And with that, it can really take a toll on people. So I really like to explore that portion and help everyone else understand, hey, we're a bunch of people here. We're a bunch of human beings that are doing these jobs. And it's important to always remember that. And with that in mind, I'd love to talk through with you a little bit about your journey with starting Zenduty. I don't know the story yet, so this is all going to be news to me right now. But why don't you fill me in a little bit on why did you start Zenduty in the first place and how did you actually go about that?
So in 2019, when my co-founder, Ankur, and we were looking at a couple of ideas to work on. Both of us, we come from an engineering background. My experience primarily was in full stack engineering, building products. Ankur was more of an infrastructure DevOps guy. So between us, we truly had like full stack experience, right? About 30 years of full stack experience between the two of us. Naturally, I think when we thought of solving problems, and we always wanted to target a problem that is not easy to solve, a hard problem to solve, we naturally gravitated towards the dev tooling space, right? Because we can solve problems, we understand the dev persona really well, we can have natural conversations. None of us had a sales background, right? We are both sort of builders. We never had really a true sales background. It took us a while to learn that skill. But having said that, it was easy for us to go after this specific market because we understood the problem statement, which I'll talk about in a bit. We understood the end user persona, we understood the buyer persona. So we picked a problem that we can solve and we can sell as well at the same time. When we looked at the sort of universe of problems that needed to be solved, incident management was something that came to us naturally. We dealt with production systems for the past 15 years. And while there were some solutions that helped you manage incidents reasonably well, none of the solutions in the market took it to the next level, in the sense that we felt like they were focusing on the wrong value proposition and the wrong metric. When we looked at the solutions that existed, most of the incident management solutions just were paging solutions, right? They would page you when something went wrong. They did a good job of it. They were reliable. They would, if any of your key services in production goes down, it could be a small component, it could be a database or a cache, or it could be like an entire service. If it goes down, a set of services goes down, right? You had PagerDuty and OpsGenie and Xmatters. These solutions would page you whenever something goes down. And that's where the value proposition ended. So from the time you got paged till the time the incident actually got resolved is where we didn't really see any of the players, even the observability tools, solve that problem meaningfully, right? And as systems kept getting more and more complex, the problem expanded from that. It became even worse because now you're dealing with even more complex systems than you dealt with the year before. So we thought that, let's go and build something that will make it easy for these production engineers. And by production engineers, I don't just mean the SREs. It could be even a backend engineer or an infra engineer, right? Anyone who's responsible for the uptime of their services in production. That's who I define as a production engineer. Let's make it easy for them to diagnose incidents faster, manage the incident response process end to end, right? Our goal at the end of the day was to help these end users just focus on the remediation, right? While what we build will work around it, right? We'll solve for incident communications, we'll solve for context, we'll solve for stakeholder communications, we'll solve for response orchestration. Right? So all of that is something that we can automate through what we build, so that the on-call engineer at the end of the day can only just focus on the remediation and just get out of the situation as quickly as they can. So with that in mind, we started building Zenduty in late 2019. We shipped it in late 2019, got our first paying customer, I believe, in December 2019. And I think it resonated quite well, right? Because we were the first incident management platform that went with an end-to-end story. That's incident alerting and orchestration, and response orchestration as well. So we went with that unified story and into the market in 2019, and that really resonated with a lot of the customers, especially in segments where uptime really mattered to them. Any company that has 24/7 operations, any company that needs to stay up at least 99.9% of the time, banking, insurance, healthcare, SaaS, e-commerce, right? Utility, energy companies. So a lot of these companies wanted something that was more end-to-end and not just a paging tool. So with that in mind, we shipped Zenduty and then we started growing from there.
Yeah. So it's funny, there's this old saying, it goes something like this: the more things change, the more things stay the same. And I think that's really true in this part of the industry. I remember being in war rooms, I had to carry an on-call pager. And this was quite a few years ago that I was carrying this on-call pager. And the problem set really hasn't changed since then. We see this continually in all the conversations that we have, that this getting the right people involved in an incident at the right time is still a challenge in many companies. And then, like you said, actually working that problem and accelerating the resolution of the problem is still a major challenge in many companies. And it's the exact same challenge we were dealing with 15 or 20 years ago. I remember when I was at a major financial services institution, like a mandate came down from the executive staff that said, we need, like, our goal is a 15-minute MTTR. Wow. 15 minutes, that's aggressive, right? And so this was quite a long time ago. And so I was a monitoring architect for financial services companies. And I had to try and figure out, how do we do this? This is not an easy challenge. This is an exceptionally difficult challenge, right? Because it takes 15 minutes to even get the right person to start working on the problem most of the time.
Exactly.
So it's one of these huge issues that we see over and over again. So you started the company, and then tell me a little bit about some of the capabilities in product that really align with this end goal that you had of accelerating this. How do you help accelerate this for SREs and for anyone who has to resolve these incidents?
So I think to begin with, you provide a solid structure, a standard structure to every incident. So before Zenduty, I think there was never a real structure to any incident. I think you got paged and then it was pretty much, let's see what happens. Most companies and most leaders want an incident to go through a very predictable path. It may take 5 minutes to resolve, it may take 5 hours to resolve, right? But the path needs to be predictable in the sense that for a very specific kind of problem, a set of individuals need to be involved. Of course, you have the frontline on-call engineers who are involved from T0, the moment the incident is triggered, right? But then depending on the severity and impact of that incident, that needs to follow a very specific process, right? So if let's say that you're a bank and suddenly your transactions start failing, right? There's like a real dollar and cent impact to your business. In that moment, your key executives need to be involved, your support team needs to be involved, your account executives need to be involved. Everybody needs to know that there is this major issue that has real customer impact. So you be prepared to handle those kind of customer queries, right? That's one. On the technical side also, depending on the complexity of your production systems, you also need to ensure that a certain set of individuals across different teams are also brought into this incident management process, right? It's not the on-call engineer who's just looking at the problem, figuring out the solution, because now the nature of the incident itself has become a lot more complex than it was, say, 10, 15 years ago, because there's just so many different components within your overall production operations. So bringing in a set of responders, a set of subject matter experts, a set of stakeholders, all of them need to be part of that incident management process. So preparedness needs to be enhanced. And that's something that we had built, right? We call them task templates, which are basically playbooks for each incident. It's a response play for a specific type of incident. If it's a security incident, there's a response play. If it's an infrastructure incident, there's a specific play, right? If it's a complex incident which is impacting a key business metric, there's a specific play for that as well, right? So you can construct these very specific response plays or response paths, or what we call as task templates or playbooks within Xurrent IMR or Zenduty. And that gives you a sense of, as an engineering manager or as an engineering leader, you can deal with incidents in a very predictable way, right? It follows a very specific process. It's not chaos. You know exactly that as a leader that, hey, for this incident, I know that the right people are already involved. It's only a matter of time, right? It's only a matter of how much data we are able to get in from all of these different observability tools. How quickly are we able to diagnose the problem? How quickly are we able to come up with a remediation plan and just get out of that incident as soon as possible? Preparedness is one area where we spent a lot of time building within Zenduty. We put a lot of hard work in alert routing in general, right? So one of the problems that we identified was that every single alert went to the same on-call engineer, independent of whether that person even knew how to solve that problem, right? So if let's say that you're an on-call engineer that's dealing with you built a specific application, but then you have so many upstream dependencies where if something goes wrong upstream, you'll still get the page, right? You're not the right person to solve that problem. How do you route a complex problem to truly the right person, the person who's responsible for the service where the root cause lies? That is something that we solved in a very meaningful way using alert rules. So our alert rules looks at a lot of variables that's coming in from these different observability tools. We are able to construct those conditions, and based on certain conditions, you can route alerts to truly the right teams and the right person. Alert routing is something that we solved really well. Incident communications is something that we were really conscious of when we started building Zenduty, which is when Ankit and I started, we were very heavy Slack users. So we built it to be a Slack first platform, right? At least the earlier versions were really sort of Slack centric or Slack first. So communications, right. Instant communication, something that really makes or breaks how quickly you solve an incident. So we ensured that all of our incident management can be done within your team chat application, right? So you have that interface, that ChatOps interface within Slack. Also, now we have Microsoft Teams and Google Chat as well, right? You have that single ChatOps interface which you can use as your war room and you can pull information from Xurrent IMR. You can get a lot more context. You can quickly add responders, SMEs into the incident. You can shoot stakeholder communications. You can play around with the priorities that can trigger a couple of workflows. So we really made your communications platform the center of the incident, which is what developers like. These production engineers, they pretty much spend maybe 50%, 60% of their time within Slack or within Teams, depending on what the company uses, right? So if you're already spending all of your time within your team chat application, let's make that as the war room. And then once we have the structure, a solid structure for incident response, then you start building automations around it, right? So we have a very strong workflow engine that allows you to create very scenario-specific response plays, right? Depending on which service is impacted or whether an incident goes from a P4 to a P0, you need to kick off a specific workflow for that. So we have a very strong workflow engine that helps you create like very customized incident response plays. And then eventually we started building a little bit of intelligence into IMR, which we are working on here at Xurrent. It's shifted to the next gear after we got acquired. Right now we have a very strong AI team that's working on building a lot more intelligence that can help you diagnose incidents faster using AI. So since Zenduty/Xurrent IMR is already ingesting millions and millions of events from your production systems every single day, our AI can look at those signals, those events, and meaningfully diagnose, I would say, at least 60% of the incidents using AI, right? So that means that now your time to diagnosis will come down to like seconds, right? So that's something that we are able to achieve now. And eventually, I think we are also focusing on using AI for remediation as well. So once you are able to diagnose those incidents, how do you guide these engineers to resolve the incident? So again, you need to have a very good deep understanding of your customers' production systems, and based on that, you can suggest like remediation paths. This is what you need to do to get out of this incident or to remediate the incident. So we are working on that as well now.
Yeah, I think that's an important distinction here. So again, based on my experience in many war rooms, unfortunately, we found that the bulk of the time that was really spent trying to identify where is the problem, right? So these systems are very complex, as you said. There's upstream, downstream dependencies. You have server farms just within the application that's within your sphere of influence anyway, right? You have many different servers providing the same application. So really trying to diagnose down to where is this thing really failing? Like which component in this huge string of many components is causing me my pain. Once we identified that, then it was very quick, usually like within a matter of minutes, that we could figure out, okay, here's how we're going to fix it and implement that fix. But the build up to that point in time, it could take us potentially hours, or sometimes it took days to get there, which that still happens. It's unfortunate that there are still incidents that go on for days for companies. But I think it's a testament to the complexity of the environments that we're operating in. Yep. We have so many layers of virtualization. Like everything is virtualized. So from the infrastructure that you're running on, all the way through all of the layers of virtualization that are delivering the actual application, there's so many points of failure and so many things to look at. So it doesn't seem like it's really humanly possible anymore to just look at all of this manually. So I think, what you said, you're building systems to assist people in identifying where is this fault domain is really a critical piece to restoring service, which is only part of the battle, right? We'll talk about reliability in a second, but just restoring service as quickly as possible is battle number one.
Exactly. I think it's just so much information that we are collecting through our entire observability stack. It's too much information that's going into our observability stack, which is making it harder and harder for production engineers to diagnose faster. You need AI now. We're at a stage where you need AI to even diagnose a very simple incident, because you end up spending a lot more time looking at data that's not relevant or not really actionable. So I think that's where we're headed right now.
Yeah, the traditional needle in the haystack issue. Observability tools are wonderful, but they flood you with too much information, right? So filtering is very difficult. All right, great. So let's say someone has the incident resolved now. A lot of hard work went into that. Potentially a lot of people went into solving that problem, right? It's a very expensive meeting that you end up having when you have to gather a war room. What happens next? Because reliability is about fixing things so they don't happen again, not just getting them resolved quickly and hoping they don't happen again.
Exactly. So there is, again, an area where our customers really struggled before Zenduty, which is that companies where they had a very solid postmortem / RCA culture, those RCAs and postmortems were non-negotiable in the sense that after every single incident, you need to have that RCA done. Now, that's a really good thing for any company to have that kind of a postmortem culture. The problem was that it took a lot of time to create that postmortem, especially for a very complex incident. Now, imagine that you're the engineering manager who are the incident commander for a specific incident, right? Now, of course, it'll be your task to create that postmortem and then to present that postmortem to different team leaders, maybe even just share those postmortem throughout the organization itself, right? Now, creating that postmortem can take hours or even days, right? Now, you have to look at so many things. You need to look at when did that impact start? And before the impact, if let's say it was triggered by a change, you need to track the history of that change. And then once the change got deployed and when the incident was detected, you need to go and look at the observability tools that detected that specific anomaly. And then from that point onwards, what really happened? Somebody got paged.
Yeah.
Basically, you have to tell the story of the incident, right? That the on-call engineer got paged. He or she went to Slack, alerted a whole bunch of people, brought in a couple of subject matter experts into the incident, and tried out a couple of solutions. They tried to diagnose the incident, had a couple of hypotheses, which they tested. Some of them they were not able to validate. And then maybe like they had 10 different hypotheses, 9 failed. And then the 10th one really is something that they were able to validate. And then based on that, they came up with a response plan and then how they executed the response plan. And then, so it's basically you have to track that entire story, and getting those data points and getting those story points is something that's really difficult. You have to look into every single thread in Slack to validate different hypotheses during an incident. You may create like a separate Slack channel or like a separate Google Meet or a separate Zoom link, right? So you need to go in there and you look at the transcripts there as well. Or maybe just talk to the person who was leading that thread. So having these different conversations, tracking all these different conversations across these different channels, across different live meets, was a challenge, was a massive challenge, getting that data. And we looked at it and this is something that we can very easily automate, because with Xurrent IMR, we're pushing the data into your war rooms in Slack. We are the ones who are creating the real-time communication meetings or war rooms in Zoom or in Google Chat, right? So it's very easy for us to get the transcripts ourselves, right? So we are able to also track all the chatter that happens within Slack or within Microsoft Teams, all the chatter that's relevant to that incident. You're able to fetch those conversations around the incident. And then you apply AI to it, and then it's very easy to separate what was relevant and what was not relevant. And then what took you days can now take you like 10 seconds to generate at least the first version of your postmortem, right? Because now IMR is able to get all that data for you, create that first version of your postmortem, and then all you have to do as the engineering leader is to give your own insights. Again, that may take time because you have to analyze the entire incident and then you give your own insight. But at least you're saving a lot of time in gathering that data and creating the timeline of the incident. That's something that we are doing really well now. So we're making it easy for companies to do postmortems. The companies that already have a postmortem culture, we are making it easy for them to create those postmortems. For companies that don't have a solid postmortem culture, now with IMR, they can institutionalize that, right? All that you have to say is, just use IMR to create a postmortem and then you get the insights, get the learnings, and then just distribute it within the entire engineering team that is also already on IMR. So it's very easy for them to read the postmortem. You can, in fact, even tell the postmortem to write it in a very specific way, right? A lot of postmortems that I've read are very vanilla, they're very boring, right? You may need to write postmortems in a way that tells a story that is exciting to read. So we are working on things that makes it exciting for anyone in the organization to read a postmortem, right? Sometimes a postmortem can be a very wonderful read for not just people who are within the company, but even when you publish it outside, there's some very interesting postmortems that are written really well. So you can now, with the AI, you can write postmortems really well. And I think that will make a very big difference to the culture of continuous improvement within the companies that use IMR.
Nice. Yeah. So when I was in IT operations, one of the things that I hated to do was write. It's not one of the more fun things. And I think that goes along with most people who are in IT. We're we tend to not be writers. We tend to not take enjoyment and get enjoyment out of that process. So anything that can help write documentation, postmortems, anything we would have to write on a normal basis, I think is definitely a welcome addition. But as you mentioned, it's a really difficult problem to solve because there tends to be information in so many different places. Yeah. We actually had a team that would have to do this for us at the bank. When I was at one of the banks, we had a team that would follow up individually with all the team members that were participated in a war room and then try and piece that together based on many different conversations, which is exceptionally difficult and it's hard to get it right.
How long did it take for them to create those postmortems? This team that was responsible for the post-incident report, how long did it take for them to create a single report?
Yeah, this was like a week-long process after the end. They would have to go through. And so getting the report was at least a week from when the incident got resolved. Yeah. But that's just a report. Now you need a culture that's going to actually go ahead and make the fixes.
Exactly.
So I think it's another huge part of this is, okay, you have a report, but you haven't actually done anything. You just restored service. That was it. So now you understand the failure mechanism, hopefully. So now what are you going to do about it? Are you going to fix it for good? Does Xurrent IMR help in that area?
I think we help now that we are part of Xurrent. Whatever comes out of the postmortem needs to be implemented within a specific time frame, right? Depending on how big that problem is and if you anticipate that problem to occur again in the near future, you need to fix it very quickly, right? You can track your post-incident action items within IMR, and that can also be synced directly within Xurrent ITSM as well. Right? So if there are action items that needs to be executed by a different team, you can send those action items and you can track that within Xurrent ITSM, and you can track that in Xurrent IMR as well. So if that problem remains unsolved and as a result, the same or similar incidents continue to occur, you can attribute that unsolved or unactioned item to any recurring incidents that keep occurring, right? So then you can make a case that, we need to really accelerate this specific action item and we need to solve it ASAP because now it's creating a lot more problems than it did earlier. So you can continue to track the impact of your technical debt over a period of time within IMR. And then you can also use the Xurrent ITSM to assign those specific tasks to either engineering team or your support teams or any other teams. And then you can track it there as part of the sprints.
Yeah. And then the reality is if it happened once, there's a high likelihood that it will happen again if you don't fix the real root cause. So that's the reason why we have these root cause analysis and postmortem processes.
Exactly.
All right, cool. So you've built tremendously useful software. You started a company to do this, which is commendable in the first place. So congratulations. Mm-hmm. And then you went through acquisition. And so you've been acquired, right? We've talked about that. The company was Zenduty, and now you were acquired by Xurrent, and the product name is Xurrent IMR. I'd love to hear, as a human, how did that feel? How did it feel to have your company acquired?
When you're building a company, you anticipate a set of events. Either you become so big that you go public, or you grow at a certain rate and you just remain private, like a lot of companies now are doing, just continue to remain private and just keep growing. And then at some point, I think you only have a couple of options. One is you get acquired by a pure PE, a private equity investor that will maybe just bring in new leadership and then just run the company, versus, and this is probably the best outcome, which is that you get acquired by a company that looks at your company and your team and your products as truly complementary to what they have. So in the case of Xurrent, I think we knew that ITSM was something that is adjacent to us, right? So even we were probably way back in 22, 23, when my co-founder and we were planning out the next couple of years, right? What are we going to build next? We have IMR we have built it, it's solid, it's growing beautifully. We have a lot of these customers, these massive customers, and adoption is strong, the retention is really strong. We are planning out the next couple of years and on what to build, right? So ITSM was something that was on our radar, something that we would build. For that to happen, we would have had to build in-house teams that can build a product, that can look at the market, know the ITSM field really well. So both Ankur and I, we were not from the ITSM background. So we needed some in-house expertise to drive that product. Versus, let's say, another adjacent area would be observability. Observability was more natural. We understood the observability space a lot better, but it was a lot more crowded. If at all someone would come to acquire a company like Zenduty, it would be an observability company or it would be an ITSM company. So we were prepared to either go into those areas ourselves or prepare for an acquisition eventually. When Xurrent came, it was just a natural fit, right? Culturally, we were very similar. The way we looked at product, the way we looked at engineering, the way we looked at go-to-market, it was almost a perfect fit.
Sure.
Both of us. Since we were anyways heading into the ITSM domain at some point, we thought, you know what, it's better to merge with a company that is already strong, that has a very strong market presence, that has a very strong team, and just partner up and merge. That will be the best outcome for all of us.
Yeah, both spaces are crowded, right? The observability space, the ITSM market, very crowded spaces already. So it was a nice fit for you to slot into a company that had a very strong ITSM offering already.
Exactly. They're both crowded and competitive at the same time. I think even the observability space, I look at all the companies, they're building so quickly. They're just so strong, right? And they have such really good product teams. And the same goes for ITSM as well, right? Like really strong engineering teams, really strong product teams, very strong in-house expertise. They know where the market is going. Right? So when we looked at both of these markets, one realization was that, you know what, the existing players they can probably see a couple of years ahead than us, right? Which means that their company and their product will be ahead of us. So it's better to partner with someone. If you're looking at ITSM, it's better to partner with someone who knows the ITSM industry inside out. And when you look at Kevin and Martine and the entire Xurrent team, right, they had like decades of experience in ITSM. So very strong leadership in ITSM, and naturally it just made sense to go this way.
Yeah. All right, let's switch gears a little bit. You have a ton of experience in this reliability space now. You have a lot of customers. I'm sure you've gotten to see what they do, what their best practices are. If you could boil it down to 3 suggested recommendations for our listeners on ensuring the best possible reliability within your organization for your own applications, what would those 3 pieces of advice be?
I think number 1 is just have very strong observability. That's the base. Without strong observability, I don't think you can set your team up for incident management effectively, right? So you need to have a very strong tooling for observability. And there's so many players in the market. It's not just choosing the right solution, but it's also setting up observability that is efficient and not expensive as well, right? So you need to track the right metrics. You need to track the right SLIs. You need to measure your SLOs. You need to also look at bringing in observability that can track certain changes. So you're tracking metrics, but you also need to track changes and then marry that information, any change information, to any anomalies that pop up in production. So starting with a strong base of observability, I would say, is 1. Number 2, I think, is just give ownership to your individual engineers, make them all production engineers. What I mean by that is whoever builds a service should be ultimately responsible for its reliability or uptime in production. A lot of different models that exist out there. Some of them have a central model, some of them have a decentralized model. Of course, Xurrent IMR, we built it to support both of these models, right? But it's always better that if you're able to decentralize the management of all of the services to the individual engineers that actually shipped it and built it, that always has the best possible outcome when it comes to minimizing MTTR, right? Because the person who built it is always the best person to manage any incidents related to that service. So decentralizing incident management to the individual teams. And number 3, I would say, is just have accountability in general, right? So a lot of companies and a lot of services, I think, while incident management it's tough, it can be very stressful, right? But at the same time, you need to make sure that accountability at the team level is there, which means that there are certain teams that can build solid services, that can ship services in production and they have solid uptime. And then certain teams, if they're not shipping reliably, then they need to be accountable, because the uptime of your service is also has a major impact of the uptime of every service that's downstream of you, right? So the more upstream you are, the more accountable you need to be held. So just tracking the right metrics, tracking the right MTT, MTTR metrics within IMR is something that you should be doing you should be evaluating those every single week to ensure that your team takes reliability as seriously as you do as an engineering leader.
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting. So you mentioned a little bit about tooling, but a lot of this is about culture and process, right? So tools are important. They are, but they don't fix your problems for you.
Exactly.
It's what you do around the tooling.
I always get I've had a couple of custom conversations where they look for tooling to fix what are essentially cultural problems. I can go on and on about feature requests where certain folks, they wanted to introduce certain features within IMR so that their team is forced to take reliability seriously. All right. So I would say you can't use tooling to fix culture. I think that is top down. And once you have that, once everyone's aligned that, hey, we are a company that needs to be up, whatever, 3949 times, then we need to take reliability very seriously at every single level.
Yeah. All right, Vishwa. Listen, thank you so much first of all, for founding Zenduty and for trying to help people solve this very real challenge. I think you've helped a lot of people, right? I know some of the stories from some of the companies that use your software and have taken your advice and have a good, strong culture. And you've made a real difference in companies. These are real people, right, that we're making this difference for, who if as a company, you can help people get a little bit of their life back and not spend all of their time on call, make their on-call time more enjoyable, more bearable, shorter. I think that's a huge win, all right, when trying to do something that genuinely helps people. So congratulations on that. Congratulations on being acquired by Xurrent. Huge step.
Yep.
That's amazing. And I just want to convey my personal appreciation. We've had lots of conversations. I've learned a lot from you. So thank you for sharing your knowledge. I appreciate you sharing your knowledge, not only personally with me, but on this podcast as well, with the many conversations that you've had. Certainly, we'll hear from you again in the future, but I did want to say thank you. And I hope everyone else that listens to Incidentally Reliable appreciates you as much as I do and as much as the people in our company do.
Thanks, Jim, for those kind words. And I'm pretty sure that I think the podcast is now in good hands. I think especially with someone with your experience, I think you can have, I strongly believe that you can have a conversation at a different level than I ever did, considering your experience. And I'm looking forward to all the new podcast episodes that come in 2026. And I'm looking forward to staying in touch with all of you guys.
All right. Thank you, Vishwa. That's very kind of you. I appreciate your kind words. And for everyone listening to Incidentally Reliable, we are going to have a good, strong season coming up here. So I encourage you to subscribe, stay tuned in, and it's going to be interesting to see what comes next. So thank you all for listening. Appreciate you, and we'll see you next time.